Niccolò Machiavelli, the thinker who revealed how power works. What if everything you believe about leadership is incomplete? What if the very qualities we praise most, goodness, honesty, mercy, moral purity, are not always enough to protect a state, hold authority, or survive political struggle? This is the disturbing question raised by one of history's most misunderstood thinkers, Niccolò Machiavelli. He is often remembered as a prophet of cruelty, a teacher of manipulation, a symbol of political cynicism. But that reputation misses something essential. Machiavelli was not simply defending ruthless men. He was trying to describe the world as it really was. In that sense, he was something more dangerous than a villain. He was a rebel of thought, someone willing to think differently, to challenge accepted moral language, and to say openly what others preferred to hide. Machiavelli was not a prince, king, or military conqueror. He was a Florentine Republican official, a civil servant in one of the most unstable political environments in Europe. Florence was a city of brilliance and tension, surrounded by ambitious powers, threatened by foreign armies, and shaken by internal rivalries. It was a place where alliances shifted quickly, ideals collided with necessity, and survival often depended on calculation rather than sincerity. In this world, Machiavelli rose through intelligence, discipline, and political skill. He served the Florentine Republic in an important diplomatic and administrative role, which gave him something rare: direct access to power in action. He did not study politics as an abstract philosophy. He watched it unfold in negotiations, crises, betrayals, and war. He saw rulers not in theory, but under pressure. Among the figures he encountered, none left a stronger impression than Cesare Borgia. Borgia was feared across Italy for his ambition, cunning, and willingness to use force without hesitation. Many saw only brutality in him. Machiavelli saw something more unsettling: political effectiveness. He observed how Borgia neutralized enemies, imposed order, and acted decisively in moments when hesitation could mean collapse. Machiavelli did not admire cruelty for its own sake. What fascinated him was that power in the real world often seemed to reward decisiveness, timing, and results more than conventional virtue. That realization would shape his thought forever. Then everything changed. In 1512, the Florentine Republic fell, and the Medici family returned to power. For Machiavelli, it was not merely a political transition, it was a personal catastrophe. The government he had served was dismantled, his office disappeared, his influence vanished. A man once trusted with affairs of state suddenly found himself excluded from the world he understood best. The fall was swift. The silence that followed was worse. In 1513, Machiavelli was accused of involvement in a conspiracy against the Medici. He was arrested, imprisoned, and tortured. The method used against him was the strappado. His arms were tied behind his back, his body was hoisted upward by rope, then dropped with violent force, wrenching his shoulders. It was not only physical agony, it was humiliation, uncertainty, and the cold lesson of what power looks like when it turns against the powerless. He, who had spent years studying states and rulers, now experienced politics in its most naked form. He never confessed. Eventually, he was released, not because justice had triumphed, but because he was no longer judged dangerous enough to fear. Then came exile. Removed from public life, Machiavelli withdrew to the countryside. For a man formed by diplomacy, statecraft, and political movement, this was a kind of living erasure. He was no longer at the center of events. He was outside them. By day, he dealt with routine rural life, a world far removed from embassies and councils. But by night, something remarkable happened. He returned to power, not through office, but through thought. In one of the most famous letters of the Renaissance, Machiavelli described how he would take off his work clothes in the evening, put on formal garments, and enter, in his imagination, the company of the great thinkers of the past. It is one of the most cinematic images in intellectual history. A fallen statesman in enforced obscurity, dressing as if for court, not to meet princes, but to meet ideas. In those hours, exile became transformation. It was there, in defeat and distance, that Machiavelli wrote The Prince. This was no utopian dream, no moral sermon, no comforting fantasy about how rulers ought to behave. It was a cold, lucid meditation on how power is acquired, used, and kept. Machiavelli argued that a ruler cannot survive by goodness alone. He must learn, when necessary, how not to be good. He must understand fear, deception, violence, reputation, and force. Not because these things are noble, but because politics does not always permit innocence. One of his most famous arguments is often reduced to a single, brutal line, that it is safer to be feared than loved if a ruler cannot be both. The statement shocks because it cuts against everything people want leadership to mean. But Machiavelli's deeper point was not that love is worthless or cruelty admirable. It was that political life places leaders in situations where moral ideals and practical survival do not always align. A ruler who ignores this may remain virtuous and lose everything. This is why Machiavelli mattered so much. Before him, political thought was often framed in terms of virtue, justice, and moral duty. He shifted the discussion toward reality. He asked not what leaders should look like in an ideal world, but what they actually face in a dangerous one. And yet the deepest irony of his life is this: the man who understood power so clearly could not fully recover his own place within it. Machiavelli dedicated The Prince to the Medici, hoping that the book might restore him to political service. It was, in one sense, a job application from a disgraced former official who still believed he had something indispensable to offer. But the book did not return him to the height of influence he had once known. He later regained some limited favor and received important commissions, yet he never fully returned to the center of power from which he had fallen. That irony is part of what makes him unforgettable. He could explain the machinery of politics with unmatched clarity, yet he remained partly shut out from the machine itself. So how should we judge Machiavelli? Was he dangerous? Yes, because he challenged the comforting illusions people use to protect themselves from reality. Was he immoral? Not in the simple sense his critics imagined. He was a rebel of thought, a man who refused to confuse hope with analysis or moral language with political truth. He challenged the norms not because he despised morality, but because he saw that public life often operates according to harsher laws than private conscience wants to admit. That is why he still unsettles us. Machiavelli does not let us hide behind easy ideals. He forces us to ask whether we want leaders who are good, leaders who are effective, or the almost impossible combination of both. He reminds us that power has its own logic, whether we approve of it or not. To ignore that logic is not virtue. It is blindness. In the end, Machiavelli did not corrupt politics. He exposed it. And that is why, centuries later, his voice still feels dangerous, because the most unsettling truths are often the ones that refuse to flatter us.